What's up, traders? So the VWAP. I've had so many questions about the VWAP and the indicator that I use for it. So in this video, I'm going to share it all. I'm going to share what the VWAP actually is, the indicator that I use and the settings for that indicator, as well as examples of trades of how I combine the initial balance and the VWAP together. So let's get into it. So first of all, what is VWAP? Well, VWAP stands for volume weighted average price. Okay. Now, first of all, let's look at the AP part, the average price. And let's have a look at this last trade that I took on Friday and look at this example just here. So if we look at the high of the initial balance here, just about here, that price is 23,663. Okay. And the low is here, the initial balance low, which is 23,443 roughly, okay? And at the time of our entry here, you can see that the price is 23,553. So at the time of entry, this was the average price. You can see here is bang on that VWAP when we get the entry. So basically the VWAP is the average price that is being traded for that particular asset at that particular time. So at 10:15 for MNQ, the average price at that time at 10:15 was 23,553 because it works out the average of the high and the low and it's got your average there. So that's what average price basically means. Really, really simple, nice example there. But what does the volume weighted bit mean? Well, with the VWAP, it places more importance on the larger executions, the larger orders that are placed on the market. So, for example, if you are Johnny living in your mum's basement and you're placing 1 micro on a SIM funded account, it's not going to impact the VWAP too much, okay? When we're talking about large orders, we're talking about big institutions, okay? So it's placing more emphasis on those larger orders. So that's what the volume weighted bit means, basically, okay? Now, when it comes to why you should actually use the VWAP, well, first of all, institutions use it. So you should be paying close attention to it, okay? And because institutions use it and because traders watch the VWAP so carefully, you tend to find that price reacts when it reaches or gets close to VWAP. And this example shows perfectly here. We reach the VWAP, it bounces and moves low. We get that reaction because usually when it's around VWAP or touches VWAP, we get some sort of bounce or some sort of reaction of some kind. Not all the time, of course, but a lot of the times. Now, this particular VWAP here, okay, is what we would call an anchored VWAP. Okay, and an anchored VWAP is basically anchored or set to a particular time in the market. So if we look here, this anchored VWAP starts from 9:30 a.m. That's the start of the New York session. So this yellow line here is the New York anchored VWAP. And this green line here, if we just go to where it actually starts, which is here at 6 o'clock in the evening, the day before, that's the start of the futures session for that day on Friday. That's when the futures session starts for the Friday. It starts at 6 p.m. the day before. So you can see here that it's anchored to that 6 p.m. candle just there and then goes along like this. So the anchored VWAP is basically a VWAP that is anchored to a particular time, and it will show you the average price for that asset based on where it's anchored from, okay? Now, a question I often get is which of these two VWAPs, the New York VWAP, the yellow line, and the green VWAP, the daily VWAP, okay, is what I call it, or some people call it the futures VWAP because it's anchored to the beginning of the future session for that day, whatever you want to call it. People always ask me, well, which one is more important? Well, for me, it's this keyword here, volume. And for me, that word kind of says it all about which one is really more important, because I think the New York, in my personal opinion, the New York VWAP is the more important one. That's the one I give the bigger emphasis to when I'm trading. And why is that? Well, it's because you have more volume in the New York session than you would at the beginning of the futures session at 6 p.m. the previous day. And if you don't believe me, let's just throw on a volume indicator here. So we can see here at 9:30, we got 40.43K, you can see on the volume indicator there. But if we go to 6 p.m. with the daily VWAP, there you go, 5.62K. So the amount of volume is huge in terms of the difference between these two VWAPs. So for me, I do place more emphasis on the New York VWAP than I do the daily VWAP, but I still think that having both on the chart is super, super important going forward. Now, the question is, how do you actually put these VWAPs onto the chart in the first place? And what settings do I use for these VWAPs? Well, I actually use the Edgeful VWAP suite for my VWAPs, okay? It's an indicator that puts the New York VWAP and the daily VWAP on my chart automatically. And this indicator just makes trading for me so much simpler because with this VWAP, I don't need to anchor each and every VWAP each and every day. It's just put on automatically for me. And for me, I just want each and every trading session to be as simple as possible with fewer things to do as possible. That's just the way I like to work. However, if you don't have the Edgeful indicator, it's still easy to put the VWAPs on. You don't necessarily need that indicator for the anchored VWAPs. What you can do is you can go to this here. This is an anchored VWAP button just here or icon, and you click that and you basically just hover over the candle where you want to anchor it to. You can click any candle. Like I could click that one there and it'll put an anchored VWAP on for me. But if you're looking to put the New York VWAP on, you need to click the 9:30 a.m. candle and click that and it will put the VWAP on for you, okay? And the settings that I use is this one here. So if you go to this button here, I actually use this one here. Open, high, low, close, 4, okay? That's why these indicators look a little bit differently. The yellow one is just a bit above, the blue one is just a bit below because they've got different settings to them. If I go onto my settings here for my indicator, you'll be able to see that actually the inputs for it for the New York and the daily are open, high, low, close, for both. Okay, so that's the setting that I use for the anchored VWAP. Now, I promised that I would show you examples of trades that I've taken using the VWAP with the initial balance. And using a combination of these two things have been so important for the payouts that I've got in 2026 so far. So let's get into some trade examples here. And let's first of all go to this month that we're on at the moment. And let's go to Monday, the 2nd of March trade to begin with. Now, this trade here is really good for showing how I use the VWAP to identify the trend in the session. Basically asking myself, well, who is in control, buyers or sellers here? And basically, a very simple way to look at it is if we are above the VWAP, then buyers are in control. So we're more likely to look for longs. However, if we are below the VWAP, then sellers are in control. So maybe we'd be looking for shorts more instead. And since the beginning of the New York session at 9:30, we have not had a single close except for this one here below the VWAP. So that is screaming buyers are in control. I am looking for longs. I want to trade the right side of these two VWAPs, which I do here, entering on the IB25, the 25% retracement inside the initial balance, and we get that beautiful bounce off the VWAP. Because remember what we said earlier in the video, price tends to react at VWAP. Price tends to bounce or do something on or near VWAP. And it did here, and it popped towards the initial balance high where I got out around about this candle here for a nice trade. So that's the first way that I use VWAP, to identify who is in control and to identify the trend in the session. Now, the other way that I use VWAP is for it to be sort of like an invalidation level. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, let's first of all go to Wednesday the 4th here for this winning trade, okay? And I'm going to show you a losing trade in a minute as well, of course. Now, if we look here, okay, at this trade, we are, let's look at it again from what we discussed before. We are, apart from these candles here, buyers have been in control for the majority of the session. So I'm looking for longs in this session, okay? Combine that with my initial balance strategy where the IB low is formed first, the IB high is formed second, so we're more likely to break the IB high first, which is great. So we're looking in that direction, okay? We get an entry at the IB 25, okay? Now, if price hypothetically went below the VWAP and it closed somewhere here, that's where I'm thinking, okay, so buyers may not be in control anymore. Maybe worth me getting out of the trade early, cutting the loss before 1R, taking a smaller loss than I need to for the day, and walking away with a small loss. And that can happen sometimes. That's trading, of course, okay? But of course, price didn't break below the VWAP, so the invalidation level here held up nicely. In fact, it didn't really break below the IB25, so this was a really beautiful trade. But not all trades are going to be beautiful. And let's have a look at Tuesday, the 3rd of March. Now, this was not a beautiful trade, okay? But this was how I use VWAP as an invalidation level here. So if we look here, once again, we are below the VWAP. We've had some wicks where buyers have tried to take control, but they've not been successful. We then move lower. Now, the IB high has formed first. The IB low has formed second. So we're looking for pops lower to the initial balance low, for the initial balance low to be broken, or at least for price to move towards there. We get the entry at the IB25, and unfortunately, price just didn't move low enough for me to get my base hit. I was like a few dollars off getting my base hit, but it didn't move just a little bit lower that I needed it to. It then dramatically moved higher, and you can see, look at this candle here. Strongly breaks the VWAP. That's telling me, whoa, okay, sellers no longer have control here. Buyers may be taking control. Of course, it can just do this and move back lower, but I make the decision there that based on the strength of that candle, that it's time for me to get out. And so I get out around about where this yellow line here is here, and I take a much smaller loss than what I would have taken if price then went further and hit my stop. So we got out around about here, taking a nice small loss there, okay? So that's the other way that I use VWAP, as like an invalidation level as well, to tell me that I'm wrong, get out now, okay? Now, another way that I use the VWAP is for some sort of rubbish like this, okay? Now, this is actually from the 30th of January, but this trade lives long in the memory for me because I was on the Edgeful stream at the time, and this was my first ever appearance on a stream, and price was just choppy. It was just so choppy. It was miserable. And when we were discussing this on stream, I was saying to the guys, I am not interested in this trade. Why? Well, because if you look at the VWAPs, they're so flat. They are like flat as a pancake. So that's telling me that buyers nor sellers are really in control. They can't decide between them. And you can just see here with price chopping between them, closing below, closing above, closing below, closing above. And this is where trades just blow accounts. This is where traders lose accounts, get chopped up to pieces, wanting to take a trade on the day where it's just not really worth it. So, and that's really the final way of how I use the VWAP here, as sort of a way to sort of stay out of trades. Before we finish, I just want to show you this trade here, which was my last trade from last week. And this was just a beauty of how the initial balance and the VWAP work perfectly here. Because we've got the initial balance high, form first, the initial balance low, form second. So we're very likely to move towards the initial balance low and break it, which we actually did just, okay? Now, as well as that, we can see that buyers tried to take control here on the VWAP. They couldn't. Sellers retook control with strength and moved lower. Price then retraced back up, and as we said before, price tends to do something of VWAP, and it did. I entered here on the IB50 on the VWAP, exactly. And then price responded, it reacted to the VWAP, moved lower, and I got out somewhere around about here. And this was just a beautiful trade to show how the initial balance and the VWAP can work together. So I hope you got some value from this video of what the VWAP is and how you can use it in your trading and apply it to whatever edge or strategy you have. If you're trading the initial balance already, maybe the VWAP is something that you can look to add in order to filter out the rubbish, choppy trades and to give you a sense of direction when you're trading. So, hope you liked it, guys. Make sure you subscribe, make sure you comment, and until next time, see you soon.